All right, my friends, it's now time for the Soulful Psalm segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, you take one of the Psalms from the book of sung praises, from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament that we hear in every Mass. We connect that Psalm to the daily Mass readings. Well, today, as we continue our journey of faith here, today is the Thursday of the 8th week in Ordinary Time, and the first reading is from Peter, which beautiful reading today, and followed by the Gospel, which is from Mark's Gospel, Mark chapter 10, and the Psalm that joins them all together is Psalm 100, which is one of the invitatory Psalms. So 95, 100, 67, and 24 are the invitatory Psalms. Those are Psalms that invite us to prayer. Those are one of those Psalms are typically prayed at the beginning of either vigils or matins or lauds, or as an office of readings and morning prayer. So the first reading from Peter, I love this, like newborn infants longing for pure spiritual milk, so that through you it may grow into salvation. So he's talking about like how a baby, longing for milk from its mother. We as newborn infants in the faith, through the baptismal font of Holy Mother Church, we're longing for that spiritual milk, that spiritual nourishment, that we may grow into salvation, right? And so that we're growing spiritually in our life of faith. I love that. I love when the apostles use these examples, these metaphors, to draw us more deeply into the mystery, not using a lot of fancy theological language. Remember, these guys were fishermen and farmers, with the exception of a few. Matthew was a tax collector, and they really didn't have much of a formal education. So I love when they use analogies from nature or from the lived experience of an agrarian society in order, or just in the family, to draw us into a deeper understanding of Christ. And he says, like living stones, you are built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer sacrifice acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Of course, Peter here is talking about the priesthood of all believers, the one priesthood that we share. Well, there's only one priesthood, the priesthood of Jesus Christ, right? But we all share with that in different ways. Those who are baptized participate in the priesthood of all believers, and the main job of a priest is to offer sacrifice. So our lives are to be an acceptable sacrifice before the Lord when we continue to live in harmony with the teachings of Jesus Christ and the faith. And then the Gospels from Mark chapter 10. Jesus was leaving Jericho, and of course the crowds are following him. And there was Bartimaeus, a man that was born blind, who was along the roadside. He says, "Jesus, son of David, have pity on me." And people say, "Shut up, fool! That's Jesus. He ain't got no time for you." And he calls out even louder, "Jesus, son of David, have pity on me." And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him, bring him over here." And so hey, take courage. The Lord is calling you. Say, I can imagine this scene. They're leading this guy to Jesus, and he looks at Jesus. Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" Which is a very strange question. I want to see. And through the power of faith, God allows him to see him, but also to see the truth as well.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.